Well, welcome scholars to our Opportunity in Action event, Ask Me Anything. This event is a space for you to ask questions to leading professionals in Washington State. If you have any questions, please do type them in the box to your right, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can in the short amount of time that we have with our special guest. Remember, we do expect a level of professionalism in those questions. So without any further ado, welcome President and Chief Legal Officer of Microsoft and WSOS Board Chair, Brad Smith.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brad, for being here. So just to start things a little bit, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and perhaps for the WSOS scholars in the room who may be unaware, your role or your connection to WSOS?
Sure. Well, a little bit about myself. I grew up in the middle of the country in Wisconsin. I sometimes joke that I grew up in a middle-income family in the middle of the country, with the most common name in the middle of the phone book, Smith. At least it was the most common name back then. I have no idea there's no phone books anymore. But I grew up in Wisconsin and ended up going to college out on the East Coast and went to college and law school and then lived in Europe and joined Microsoft in Paris 25 and a half years ago. And lived here in the Seattle area and worked here in Redmond since 1996, so it's been a long time. I became the general counsel of Microsoft in 2002 and then the president of the company in 2015. My involvement with WSOS has really been, I just have to say, almost an endeavor of just real passion for me. It started in interesting circumstances because in the middle of the last recession, it became clear that state funding for higher education was going to be cut substantially. The state could not afford to fund higher ed. And it then became clear that the only way to keep the doors open to everybody at the public universities was to increase tuition, which was a hard thing to do. So Christine Gregoire, when she was governor in 2010, asked me if I would chair a task force to develop recommendations about what to do about funding for higher ed. And I said yes, but I said only if she came to every meeting. And I said, let's do this together rather than just have me work with this group and produce a report. And we had a half dozen of these meetings. And I'll always remember, like it was yesterday, this day in November of 2010, because Chris, the governor, came to my office before the meeting. We were having the meeting here. And I said, we have to increase tuition. We all know that. You sort of knew that. That's why this task force got formed. But let's not do that alone. Let's do something that is going to survive this recession and is going to be of a more lasting and positive impact for students in our state. And I said, let's create something that doesn't exist anywhere in the country. Let's create something where the business community and companies and individuals can donate for a scholarship program, and then the state will match their dollars. And that's where the idea for WSOS was born, just 2 floors upstairs. And then in 2011, it became a law. And Boeing and Microsoft each announced we donate $25 million. And I guess that's how you end up as the board chair. And that's how I ended up as the board chair. And so she appointed me, and then Governor Inslee reappointed me. And it's been just an amazing thing to see what the staff has done, what Naria Santa Lucia has done, leading the organization, and frankly, most importantly, what the students have done. It's really inspiring.
Well, thank you so much for your support. I know we all really admire you and look up to you for wisdom, and who better to be chair of WSOS board than you? So thank you. And you mentioned a little bit about Princeton. So, so what are some things you wish you knew after finishing your undergraduate degree at Princeton?
Well, for me, it was interesting because I grew up, as I mentioned, in Wisconsin, in a relatively small town, a town called Appleton. It had about a population of 70,000. And then I went off to Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey, and it was a real culture shock for me. It was on the East Coast. I grew up in the Midwest. The first year, my freshman year, I really felt like I was sort of a fish in the wrong ocean. And I actually wondered, gosh, should I stay here or transfer somewhere else? And I thought seriously about leaving. I stuck it out. Which doesn't mean that's the right decision for everybody, by the way. It did turn out to be the right decision for me. And I just had a wonderful experience and came away from my experience at Princeton just with this wealth of not just knowledge, but I think more than anything else, how to learn, and how to apply myself, and frankly, to a large extent, not to give up when there were hard days, because there were very many hard days that I experienced. I then left, thinking I knew a lot about the world, and then I graduated and found out I didn't. And maybe that's the thing that I, probably, benefited or would have benefited even more from appreciating. You think you are mastering so much every day in college, and you are. I mean, it's amazing how you're just, your abilities, your skill set, your knowledge grows. And then you go to the next stage, you go, oh my gosh, I have to start over at the bottom floor again. But the thing I found was the more you do that in life, the more you just feel confident that you can keep doing it because you've done it before.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And being at Princeton, after you left, or before you left even, did you have any mentors or anybody that you looked up to throughout your time there?
Well, I think almost everybody who is successful in life succeeds because they have the help of other people. So I just think all throughout my life, I was incredibly fortunate to have help from lots of people who mentored me. It started with my parents growing up. I had 2 high school teachers that played just instrumentally important roles for me in high school. I definitely had professors in college. I had some older friends. I had my girlfriend who became my wife. I think I'd say we sort of helped and supported each other. I had a chance, I worked all through college. I mean, I had so many different jobs in college. But like anything, you start off like my freshman year. I was delivering the New York Times. I was having to get up at 6 in the morning, and like what college student gets up at 6 in the morning? It was very quiet on campus then, and I served food in the cafeteria and these various things. But by my junior and senior year, I figured out things, and I had this wonderful job. I was the student assistant to the university's director of government affairs. And so she was really responsible for the public policy work of the university on principally science and technology and education issues. And she was a great mentor for me. And I learned a lot from her in lots of different ways. So I was also, I have to say, really fortunate because, really throughout my life, I had mentors who were men, and I had mentors who were women. I had mentors from a wide variety of backgrounds, even different. The professor who was the advisor for my thesis was originally from the Netherlands. So I think I've always been perhaps a little, more comfortable than some people are just interacting with lots of different people because I had mentors who were lots of different people. They came from lots of different backgrounds.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's important to surround yourself with people with different opinions, different aspirations to get the most out of, your experience in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'd like to first, kind of talk more about the tech industry since I know a lot of WSOS scholars are pursuing tech. So what are some of the biggest challenges facing the tech industry in what direction is the tech industry heading towards right now?
Well, I think that the tech sector is in an amazing place. At one level, technology, I would argue, is among the most important and influential parts of the global economy today. It's impacting, it's reshaping everything. Tech companies are doing very well. If you look at the 10 most valuable companies on the planet, I think today 8 of them are tech companies, and that's really quite remarkable. But we're also quite we're quite challenged, and we're even going through a very dynamic period. Now, it's a really exciting time because technology is changing very quickly. And the number one thing I would say is artificial intelligence, or AI, is really infusing everything. So when I think about when WSOS was started, we talked about computer science. Now it's really computer and data science. And you have the computer scientists, you have the data scientists, and they are the driving force, certainly, of the innovation at a company like Microsoft. But second, I would say that the innovation process has become much more multidisciplinary than it was before. When you think about what AI is really about, in so many ways, it's about creating computers that can perceive the world and learn and reason like humans, and then make decisions like humans. Well, once you put it that way, I think you come to appreciate that it's probably a good thing that we have people involved who are not just computer and data scientists. Every discipline, I think, really now has a role in where these fields are going. And that really means across the humanities and the social sciences and the like as well. But then there's another dimension that is really important for tech right now. Because the societal impact globally is so substantial, the expectations have really risen very quickly. Even the demands and pressures have risen. For tech companies to address a wide variety of issues, whether it's privacy or security or safety or ethical questions around artificial intelligence. And so, you have to think through a lot of these issues, but then ultimately you have to be able to operationalize good principles on a global scale. Yeah. So, you and I could sit here and say, you know what, we really have to make sure that if we see a repetition of what happened in Christchurch, New Zealand a month ago, namely this horrendous, tragic terrorist attack at these two mosques, and if somebody starts to put video up on that, we have to get it down. We have to get it down right away. In fact, we better get it down right away because literally just last Thursday, the Australian government passed a new law saying that if we don't get it down right away, we face criminal penalties. Okay, I get it. That's a good principle. Then you realize we have 9 different services just at Microsoft where somebody could try to post that. They could put it on LinkedIn. They could share it on OneDrive. They could, share links to it in Xbox Live. And then you realize that they could do it in different languages. And then you realize that it could happen in the middle of the night in Washington State. And we have to get this down in 10 minutes. Wow. We better have new tools, processes, systems. And I would argue that no industry in human history has had to operationalize these kinds of changes on a global scale the way the tech sector really needs to step up and do so right now. So all of this is really a change that is calling on lots of people. And when you just think about all the things I just described, you realize that almost regardless of what you studied as a student, there's probably some need for it to solve some of these problems.
Yes, and I totally agree. I think this change comes with, diverse people with diverse backgrounds, right, coming into the industry and, bringing their skills. And that really just kind of segues into my next question. We know AI is a big trend now, and that's known. But how would a diversified workforce help with the challenges of AI, and specifically cybersecurity?
Well, I guess what I would say is I think we need a diverse workforce to help on AI in multiple respects. One is I just take the dimension I talked about before, which I would call a multidisciplinary perspective. Second, I think that there's a lot to be said for having a really, I'll just say, a workforce that reflects the diversity of the world, women as well as men, people from around the world, every race, ethnicity, every indicia that you could point to. And the reason that is so important is because the decisions that are being made need to be made fairly. You need to avoid bias. What we have found in some of the early systems is that facial recognition, for example, in many instances can be biased, and it can do much more poorly when, for example, in trying to identify women than men or people of color compared to, say, Caucasians. And part of this is an issue around data sets and the quantity and quality of data for different groups. But it also goes to the people working on a team. I think you want a team that represents all of these different factors, because I think that kind of team is going to be more sensitive to the kinds of concerns that are going to arise. And I think that's true in the cybersecurity space, but I think it's actually true in almost every space.
I agree with that. And for WSOS scholars, how can, we prepare to be competitive in the job market? Because now we know, for example, for getting a job at Microsoft, there's a lot of outside talent, right? But how can specifically WSOS scholars from this state be prepared for this competitive market?
Well, I guess I would say three things. I mean, first, it does matter what you study, and if you're in WSOS, you're probably studying the kinds of skills that are going to help you in the workplace. The whole program is oriented towards concentration in areas that are in demand. So, if you're taking a major that qualified you for an opportunity scholarship, not only congratulations on the scholarship, congratulations that you're studying something that's highly likely to be valuable to employers. Second, I think it's really useful to think about life skills. And to me, one of the things I'm so excited about with respect to WSOS is the work that's been done in the last 5 years, really since Naria Santa Lucia agreed, thankfully, to head the organization, to focus on mentorships, coaching, support systems, internships, connections with employers. We sort of joke around here that if you study the right thing, that will get you your first job. But if you have the right life skills, that will get you your first promotion. And so the more you can develop those life skills while you're a student, the more you're going to have a head start when you get to the place where you can get your first job. And then the last thing I would just say is I've always really believed that there's a lot to be said for just having an attitude and a commitment of doing well whatever you do. I'm not an enthusiast of doing things poorly or doing things in a mediocre way because it just doesn't get you anywhere over the long term. I obviously started as a lawyer, and the very first project that I got when I joined the most really prominent law firm in Washington, D.C. at the time was about the most boring job you could imagine. I mean, it is a project that literally today is done by machines, literally, because it was a lawsuit, and what you do in a lawsuit in part is people have to produce all their correspondence, their documents, and today all those get scanned, and you use optical readers and you use search engines, and they categorize documents. But when I started in 1986, humans did that, and it was the youngest lawyers who were the humans who got to do that. So, my project was literally walking down the corridor on the 8th floor every morning to a file room where there were 110,000 pages of documents. And I had what you used then, which was called a tape recorder. And I had to record a summary of all of these blasted pages. Wow. And it took me months to do it. And I could have gone, oh my gosh, why on earth did I spend all of this time and money to get an undergraduate degree and get a law degree so I could do something so boring? Yeah. But I sat in that file room, and on about day 2, I said, you know what, I got to do this work. I am going to find a way to make it fun, and I am going to find a way to do it better than anybody's ever done it before. That may not take much, but I'll do my best. And I did a good job. And because I did a good job, you know what? My second assignment was a really good assignment. And I just sometimes feel that that's an easy lesson to lose sight of. Almost inevitably in life, you actually have to start out by doing something that is not going to be the most exciting project of your life. Just do it well, and your next project will be so much better.
Yes, I think I can agree with that. I actually, as a side job, I actually did DoorDash for a while. And I'm saying this publicly, but because, and my mom looked at me, wow, you're really doing that, because a lot of people won't do it. They don't want to be seen or whatever reason they might have, but I think it always is to start at the bottom and to, look at life with appreciation.
Yeah.
Anything, right? So I kind of want to go back to mentorship, because I think mentors can be really important. So what should us students look for in mentors when we're choosing one, or how do they come to us, or how can we reach out?
Well, I guess the first thing is they don't necessarily come to you. That's sort of what I would say. It's a very interesting question. It's almost like, how do you find a spouse? You know,
Yeah.
it's I don't know, but I did find one. You know, it's you look for people. The first thing I would say is look for someone you can learn from, because that's really what you're trying to do with a mentor. You're trying to find somebody that you can learn from, and you know, look for an opportunity potentially to interact with that person, you know, in a natural way. You know, at some level, you know, the first place to look for a mentor is in your day-to-day life already. I actually think the best mentors you're going to find are people that you're already interacting with. So it might be a professor, it might be a coach, it might be an administrator that you're doing some project with. You know, it might be an older student. I think that people shouldn't be shy about thinking, oh no, maybe it's an older student, but it might be an older student that you're working as part of a student club on or something like that. So I would start there. And yeah, I think some days people just sort of almost think of it as something where you sort of have the, will you be my mentor? Yes, let's shake hands, and now you're my mentor. And that can work. I mean, I have people who come up to me and they sometimes say, will you be my mentor? But the truth is, I have had many mentors, and I have mentored many people, and I've been, the best situations are frankly when you get to mentor each other. But it's almost never been in a situation where, at least for me, it was like I asked somebody to be my mentor, or I said I will be your mentor. It just grew out of a relationship. The reason I'm so high on that is at least one possible approach is because you can have richer conversations. Because you're just more naturally going to get advice, and you're frankly going to get better advice from somebody who knows you, somebody who's seeing you in a variety of situations. Now then, the key thing that I would encourage is if you find yourself working with somebody like that, ask for feedback. Just say, hey, what, now that part of this project is over, what could I have done differently or better? People are reluctant to ask that question because you are at a minimum obviously inviting, maybe just in the nicest possible way, constructive criticism. But when you open the door to that, then you'll find that people will really say, you actually are interested in my opinion about what you could do better the next time. And if somebody gives you those suggestions, then really think about them. And the hardest thing is, what you really perhaps want to hear most of all is, I can't think of anything you could have done better. You did that, absolutely perfectly. But that's not the nature of life. I don't do that myself in my job after doing it this many years. But if you open yourself up to that kind of question or concern, and you are open to that kind of feedback, you'll keep getting it, and you will find it's invaluable.
Oh yeah, I think very invaluable, and it goes back to creating genuine relationships, right, with people and humans helping other humans become better humans, right?
Hopefully,
so,
yes.
Yes, hopefully that's the.
We around here we help computers become better computers, and humans become better humans.
Exactly,
That's the goal.
it goes hand in hand. So now when it comes to social justice, we all know Microsoft is an industry leader, and they are honestly really admirable as a company. So what is Microsoft's role in promoting social justice issues?
Well, it's obviously a broad topic. And so to me, the first thing I would say is when we take on an issue, we really say we're going to take on an issue. And what I really try to encourage, and I think what we all try to encourage each other to do, is say, okay, let's first start by understanding the problem. Second, then let's see if there's some constructive ideas that we can develop to bring to this problem. And then third, let's bring these ideas forward in a way that's pragmatic. Because ultimately our sense is you don't solve a problem by living in the world of theory. You've got to do it step by step, bringing some ideas forward. And just when I think about the kinds of issues that we've been working on around here in recent months, it includes environmental sustainability, it includes criminal justice reform, it includes affordable housing. And that's very much the pattern and the path that we followed for all of those. I do think that it's really valuable to try to say, you know what, I'm not an expert, we are not an expert, so let's go learn before we start telling other people what they should do. And let's go ask experts and wallow in the problem. But then let's pursue this with a real commitment. I think that, you know, we try to be, you know, when we take on an issue, we say we're not taking it on for a month or a quarter or a year, we're going to take it on for a number of years. And we end up devising a real strategy and usually putting some real resources in the form of people and time and then money to try to do something. And if you look at like what we did on affordable housing in Puget Sound in January, or what we're working on now in some of these other areas, or you know, other issues still around diversity and the like. You know, mostly I'm in the school that says, let's lead with our deeds and then follow with our words to the extent we can, and not the other way around.
Actions before words, right?
If we, yeah, I mean, you know, that gives you, if you do something that people appreciate and that they respect and that's going to make a difference, then they're actually interested in your opinion. And you know, if you're just going to offer your opinion, maybe some people will be interested, but not as many.
Not as many people would care, right? So now I guess going back to our scholars, how can empowered scholars, you know, make a difference in Washington State?
Well, I think the interesting thing is, especially in the world today, everybody has the opportunity to contribute in a meaningful way. Now, I will always remember something my wife said when she was in college. We were classmates, and I think she was quoting Bobby Kennedy. Look, you know, we don't necessarily wake up, you know, every day with the power to completely change the world, but we actually do have the power to change the world around us and around ourselves. And so, you know, you start with, how can I make a difference? And how can I make a difference in a small way? I would say, you know, or in a big way. And I wouldn't discourage anybody from being as ambitious as they can be. I would also say that sometimes the path to having an impact in a big way is start small and learn, and then figure out what works, and then do something bigger. Now, to make that more concrete, there's all kinds of things that people can volunteer to get involved in. One of the amazing things about nonprofit organizations is, you know, if you show up and say, I have time and I have passion, and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and do what it takes to make a difference, and I'm willing to listen and learn, you'll be amazed within 1 or 2 years how much impact you're having. It will be 1 or 2 years and not 1 or 2 weeks, in all honesty. But you can identify an organization, identify a cause. What I try to suggest is figure out what you're passionate about. If there's an issue that you're passionate about, get involved. Knock on the door, show up and say, I'd like to volunteer. And you will not find a nonprofit that will say, we don't need help. Because all nonprofits really need more help. And of course, in the world today, you can get involved in political campaigns. You know, next year is going to be a huge issue. It doesn't matter, you know, what political party you know, you happen to, you know, belong to or support, but there's going to be all kinds of candidates across the state, across the country, looking for help, needing help. You know, that's another way. So the great thing about just sort of life in the United States is that it is, you know, we are a society with a really strong fabric of volunteerism and nonprofits, and volunteerism and citizen action and the world of politics. So there's all kinds of opportunities for people to do something.
Yes, and I think that's especially important for our scholars. I think I really like that you brought up the nonprofit side of things, because, you know, that's a great way to just get any experience in whatever college we attend or we go to, right? Even then, just in our communities, starting in our communities with something small makes a difference.
Well, and I think one of the great things about being a college student is that there are lots of groups. And I appreciate people they may go, yeah, but oh my gosh, I have no time. You know, I've got my studies, and I've got some family commitments, and I've got a job, and all of which is true. I would still say, if you can find an hour or two a week, you know, to get involved in something, you can actually have a pretty big impact with an hour or two a week. Yeah. It will mean that you might have to. John Adams once had a famous saying that he got more done because he borrowed from his sleep. He slept less and did a little bit more. Life is about trade-offs. You have to decide. but oh my gosh, it is very rewarding and very helpful in terms of acquiring life skills, I think, if you get involved on campus or off campus.
Yes. And I think this kind of brings us more into our, I guess, you know, like what, there's a question that it says, okay, let's just move on. So as the board chair of WSOS, why is WSOS so meaningful to you?
Well, to me, the really gratifying thing about WSOS at this stage in its life is we have enough experience, we've learned enough, it's grown enough to be confident that it's actually changing people's lives in a very positive way. There was recently a study that the team completed that looked at where people were 5 years after graduating as a WSOS scholar. So where were they 5 years after college? And what it found was that on average, an individual WSOS scholar was earning 50% more than their entire family was earning when they went off to college. And you just think about the issues in the country today, across the state. We all worry that the opportunities for economic and social mobility in 2019 are less than what they were, I'll just say, in 1969. And in many ways, that unfortunately is true. I mean, there's more income inequality than there traditionally has been. There's more challenges, I think, for students who grow up in rural communities. And in that kind of milieu, we can nonetheless look at WSOS and say, you know what, this is working. It has a proven track record. Not only are people doing better, but the data that we have, to me, it's just, it's what gets me so excited about continuing to do this work. The fact that well over half of the students are the first in their family to go to college, over half are female, over half are students of color. So at a time when everybody's sort of arguing across the country, what's the future for people, I would say, hey, if you're a WSOS scholar, you are on a path to the future. Thank goodness. The other thing I like about WSOS is it's actually working at a considerable scale. There's lots of scholarship programs, and they're wonderful, but they might give out 5 scholarships a year, or they might say, hey, we do 100 or we do 1,000. And we're at a point now where we're approaching 5,000 students in college in Washington State every year on this program. So yeah, I actually think it's an interesting model. And I'm just so excited that it has paid these kinds of dividends. And what I will also say is, although it's working at a big scale, although it's serving thousands of students, so often it actually manages to focus on one student at a time. Yes. And I think that's the beauty of the mentoring services and the other things. Which is not to say that every student gets the same level of attention. You can't do that with thousands, but I do feel that if you're a WSOS scholar and you have a passion to get more out of the program, there are lots of ways for you to do that. And and what I just love about the staff for WSOS is that the staff at WSOS loves students. Yes. Not just as a theoretical exercise, but on a person-by-person basis. And I think that really makes it quite special.
Yeah, when you care about something, that shows even more, and the impact it makes is even greater, right? So, and I like that we talked a little bit about because a lot of us, we have busy lives. We all say that, right? But we can make time. So, how do you prioritize certain things in your day, or how do you make sure you get things done that should be done in the day?
That's a really good question, and to me, it always starts by coming into the office, and the first thing I do is ask myself, what is the most important thing I need to get done today? If I only get one thing done, what is it? And if I only get 3 things done, what are they? And make sure you get them done. And it changes from day to day. I'll tell you, I've been at this company for 25 and a half years, and I don't think I've ever had a single day where I got everything done that I wanted to. It's just not the way life works. But most days, I got the 3 most important things done. And that's sort of the one key to being successful over time. Not every day, because especially in my job, by 9 a.m. something blew up somewhere in the world, at least figuratively, and my day's been changed.
Yeah.
But even on those days, I knew what was most important when I started, and I tend to find a way to get back and get it done.
So, in terms of motivation, what keeps you motivated to go and reach a goal that you have in mind?
Well, it's really interesting because, obviously, at this point in my career, I don't really aspire to have a different job or a bigger job. But there are three things that definitely keep inspiring me. The first is the things I get to work on. I love the work I get to do. I love the technology that we create at Microsoft. I love the issues that connect this technology with the world, because I think they're more important than ever. Second, the thing that that really that sticks with you in ways that you might not think about at first is it's so much of doing things you love are really about doing things you love with people you love to be with. And that one is just sort of profoundly important. It certainly has been to me. There's a group here in this room, and one of them is Jane Broom. She's somebody who is the Microsoft person who works with WSOS. Jane leads our education and our philanthropy in Washington State. And Jane and I have been working on these kinds of issues for over a decade. When my wife and I co-chaired the United Way of King County program a decade ago, it was with Jane's help. When I did the higher education funding task force, it was with Jane's help. All these things. So it's like when you get to work with people you really like to work with, that is just huge. I mean, it's what keeps you coming back. And so the first two things I would say is find a place where you can do work you love, and find a place where you like the people that you get to work with. But then there's a third thing too, which I would say is always look to do something new every year. Stretch yourself, learn in a new way. You learn by doing new things. And for me, that has been huge. I mean, both in a lot of ways, I've had jobs here that have fundamentally almost reinvented themselves every couple of years because the company and the industry and the technology have been changing so much. Yes. But also, I've sought out things. Every year, I seek out something that is going to force me to do something completely new and different. And then I look back and go, oh my gosh, I learned so much from doing that. And so that never ends. It just never ends, and it's what keeps you fresh, and it's what keeps you excited.
Yeah, it keeps you excited about life and going on, just trying new things, right? And you just continue learning and pushing forward. I think, we're not surprised that the time flies, and years go by. So I really like that you mentioned that. So talking about working with people, we have to obviously be comfortable with people we work for. Sometimes we might not, right? But so what do you specifically look for when building a team?
Well, first of all, I think you just said something important that is worth thinking about. You will not always like everyone you work with.
Yes.
That is a fact of life too. You may not always like everyone you work for. Generally, I would say seek out people you like to work with, and seek out people you will like to work for. And if you occasionally find yourself in a situation where you're less than wanting to be that person's best friend, be professional, be kind, be considerate. You can learn from anybody, even if you don't really like the person, and make the most of it. And then actually, especially if you're working for somebody you don't like, and then find an opportunity to switch to a different position, even inside the same employer. Yes. But then when you get to a position where you get to build a team, that to me is the great opportunity. And you really want to me, I look for people who are, bright, have a spark, who are passionate about what they do, who, if they've been around for a while, have a track record of being successful. I look for people who want to learn, and I look for people who will complement each other, which means people who are different from each other. And then figure out how to get the most out of those differences. When you're ultimately, if you want to be a manager over time, what you ultimately learn in part is you don't actually work with everybody the same way. People are different. And so you have to adapt yourself to tune in with different people, but your goal in each situation is to help that person succeed and figure out what really helps an individual succeed. So you constantly have to adapt yourself. But mostly what I look for are people who are going to bring different skill sets to the table and be a great team collectively.
Yes, and I agree with that. I think that's why diversity is so important nowadays, and working with other people from other backgrounds is important because you never know who you're going to end up working with, right? And you have to be able to connect at some level in order to be comfortable with them. So, do you think social media's benefits outweigh the risks? Because now we live in a world where social media is literally what we live on, what we do every day.
Well, I do think that social media's benefits outweigh the risks, but I think the risks deserve a lot more attention than in the past. From my perspective, first of all, not all social media is the same. Twitter is different from Facebook, from Instagram, from LinkedIn. If I just take those four as call it the big four, I will endorse LinkedIn since Microsoft owns LinkedIn.
Yes.
They're a part of our company. For anybody who's focused on professional success, there's a lot to get out of LinkedIn, not just in terms of networking and connecting, but learning in terms of following people and the like. But I think even in terms of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the like, there's a lot to be gained from interacting with people, sharing, and I would say consuming information. I certainly am a big consumer of especially Twitter and to a certain degree Instagram. But there are risks. I think that there are risks that we need to manage better, frankly, as a tech sector. I think that there are societal risks. I was in New Zealand just less than 2 weeks after the Christchurch attack, and what it meant to have somebody who basically killed people live on the internet. I mean, these are new risks that we just have to adapt to and take account of and manage. I think for individuals, the two things I would say is you need to just think about how much time you're going to spend on it versus other things. And second, look, it's like everybody is like, hey, I posted something. How many people like it? That is sort of a natural thing to want some validation from, but it's actually not the world's most important form of validation. Yeah. So it's like anything, just keep it in perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Sometimes that's what we seek for, but there's bigger things out there than just
I hope so.
validation. Yeah, than just validation.
I hope so. If the biggest thing is the number of likes on a social media platform, then I'm not so excited about the future after all.
Yeah, and we're like we just mentioned, time flies. So we're coming down to our final question. So do you have any advice for all of our scholars to be successful in college?
Well, the one thing I would just say is, the biggest word in this scholarship is the word opportunity. Yeah, it is a scholarship that is focused on giving people an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have. Yeah. And it is for many, many people. But at the end of the day, you need to make the opportunity for yourself. You need to make the most of the opportunity this gives to you. It's like everything in life, the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So what I would say to people who are in the Opportunity Scholarship Program is the money's nice, that's good. I'm glad that you have it. I mean, it's key for hopefully studying more, working less, getting through college. But look for the other opportunities as well. The mentoring, the programs, the coaching, the networking, amazing community of scholars. It's you started it at the beginning. You said, "What did I wish I knew when I graduated from Princeton?" Well, I don't know if it would have made a difference when I was there, but the truth is one of the most valuable things about being there was getting to know the other students. They've gone on to do amazing things in the country, around the world. Had a classmate who's a Supreme Court justice, these kinds of things. And the Opportunity Scholarship Program is a network of people who are talented and motivated and make the most of each other, both in terms of enjoying each other's company, learning from each other, forging friendships, and staying connected. Because you'll be surprised 1, 5, 10, 30 years from now, you may be crossing paths repeatedly. And that's actually a really great opportunity in and of itself.
Yes. Well, Brad, thank you so much for your advice, your wisdom, your experience, and for sharing that with us, WSOS scholars. That's all the time we have. So just before we leave, I just want to remind everybody that the scholars renewal and graduation forms need to be filled out and will be open between May 1st to July 1st. So make sure you fill those out.
And I would just say that's the best advice you got on this whole thing.
No,
fill that out.
Yes, fill that out because it's important that you have your funds. And additionally, if you're interested in mentoring, again, going back to mentoring first and second year scholars, like the WSOS leads that are doing that, the scholar lead position is open, so you can find more information on our website. Thank you so much, Brad. Again, thank you for being here and for all the work you do for us. And you're just an amazing person. So thank you for being here. And scholars, look out for the next Opportunity in Action event.
Great. Thank you.